Barely legal rye? That might just be my favorite kind. Today we're doing a review of Pikesville Straight Rye Whiskey. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So today we are diving into Pikesville Straight Rye Whiskey. Now this is actually a bottle I've had for quite some time, as you can see. Never really got around to reviewing, but wanted to highlight today because I think it actually is really, really good. So what are the stats on this bottle? What are we looking at here? So this is a product made by Heaven Hill these days. Used to be a Maryland product way back in the day, and this is sort of in the heritage of Maryland rye whiskeys, but it's now produced at Heaven Hill. Like I mentioned in the little intro there, this is a barely legal rye, so it's 51% rye. To have a majority rye grain, that's what you have to be a rye whiskey. But then it is 39% corn and 10% malted barley. It is age stated at least 6 years old, which is actually pretty nice for a rye. Ryes don't take quite as long as bourbons to mature. They often sort of hit their sweet spot in that 6 to 8 year range. Bourbon can too, but a lot of people love those 10 to 12 year old bourbons too. So this is a pretty good age for a rye. Price wise, we're looking at something that's right around 50 bucks. So relatively affordable for sure, in that sort of mid-tier category there, but overall relatively accessible too, and a lot of people's go-to rye whiskey. One of the reasons is because it's 110 proof, so this gives it some extra robust flavors and some really good punch. But that's enough talk about it. Why don't we actually dive into the whiskey here and evaluate the nose, palate, and finish? Just before we do that, just want to say that if you're liking the video, hit that like button. But we're also trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. The channel has been growing a lot lately, and I'm so thankful for your support. But if you haven't already, please consider hitting that big red subscribe button. All right, let's dive into Pikesville Straight Rye Whiskey here. So on the nose, okay, I get a lot of vanilla on the nose. Little touch of caramel. There's also just like a hefty rye presence, kind of like you're smelling rye bread. Spicy, a little bit of black pepper, and some cherry. So vanilla, cherry, caramel, but then backed by this, spicy rye and black pepper kind of combination. Maybe the tiniest bit of like orange citrus or lemon citrus going on. But overall, some really nice like baking spices, rye spices, caramel, and a lot of vanilla and cherry. So inviting on the nose, not too sweet, sort of balanced out by that spiciness too, and sort of draws you in. So let's go into the palate now for the first sip. Cheers, everybody. All right, so the spice on that is great. It's really the star of the show. At the center of it is this really nice rye spice, just straight up rye. Good amount of cinnamon, baking spices, really lots of cinnamon there. And then I think it really has a black pepper note that kind of develops on the finish especially. Underneath all of that, wrapped around it, is a really nice vanilla and cherry sweetness. I don't get too much caramel, get a good amount of brown sugar, a little bit of oak too, but really the star of the show is that rye spice, and then wrapped around that is a really good cherry and vanilla that I really like. So let's go in now for a second sip, see if we can pick out some more flavors and complexity here. Cheers. Yeah, it's a really nice mix of spicy and sweet. I will say I think the sweetness is a little bit generic. I get a lot of that vanilla and cherry, a little bit of brown sugar too, and then the spiciness is that rye and black pepper and cinnamon. So it's a good combination of both. I don't think it's the most complex thing ever. It just does sweetness pretty well and does spice really well. So the combination of those is really nice, but it's certainly not the most complex thing I've ever had. For sure, I think that 110 proof really helps out. It sort of ups the level of spiciness there. It's not overwhelming. It's actually sitting at a really nice spot, I think. The mouthfeel is pretty good, probably because of that. And overall, I mean, it gives a good warming Kentucky hug feeling as well. So really a solid sipper for sure. Let's go into the third sip now and really focus on that finish and pick out some flavors there. Cheers. Okay, So wow, that one I really got a good blast of that cherry and vanilla on the front palate. The mid palate was that blooming spice and rye kick. And then the back end of it tames down. I definitely think there's still that cinnamon and black pepper kind of a lingering experience for me. But I got a little touch of that orange citrusy note on the back end. And then the finish is a lot of cinnamon, black pepper, a little bit of that vanilla and cherry sweetness sticking around, and maybe a touch of oakiness or brown sugar sticking around too. So I would say the finish is medium long, like tending toward long. The spiciness really sticks around, which is nice. And the heat, the warming sensation is really good that this brings to the table overall. All right, so what are my overall thoughts here on Pikesville Straight Rye Whiskey? First of all, very solid sipper. I think it's worth right around that $50 mark. Good proof on it. But what it does best is mix sweet and spicy. Those cherry vanilla notes are really nice, and that rye spice and cinnamon black pepper kind of kick to it, really nice. My one knock on it, not super complex. Not every whiskey has to be. I really enjoy the flavors this brings to the table, but I would say that it's a pretty straightforward rye for me. That 51% rye is nice because I think this has a good bourbon sort of backbone to it as well. But the heat on this is something that you don't get on a heck of a lot of bourbons, and I think that's what makes it really worthy of the pickup. All right, everybody, that's gonna wrap up my thoughts today on Pikesville Straight Rye Whiskey. I think it's a very solid rye sipper overall. Want to hear what you guys think though. Put down in the comments below if you have this bottle or have tasted this whiskey. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's as solid as I think it is? Is it one of your favorites? Always happy to hear what you guys have to say. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.